very muted expectations. I think Chvrches to this point. I think this is their fourth album, maybe fifth, fourth,
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't even know if we talked about the last one. If we did, it was really short.
We did, yeah. Love is Dead from 2018. That was the first one we talked about.
And I think basically to this point, we're like Chvrches is a upbeat poppy group, but not really doing anything that feels exciting, feels like they're pushing themselves. They're kind of stuck in this like 80s pop sound. Screen Violence, while I think they still maintain a lot of that sound, felt a little bit edgier and a little bit more thoughtful in terms of where they're going. And I think that obviously centers around the theme of the album, which is this like horror type theme of what happens when your screens die, or how do they impact the things around you. I thought that was pretty cool and way to go about it. How did you feel about that aspect of Screen Violence?
Yeah, I liked it. I also didn't have huge expectations going in, but was pleasantly surprised. And it's probably my favorite Chvrches album overall. To your point, the subject matter lyrically is rather dark, which is, I think, a really nice contrast to how expressive a singer Lauren Mayberry is, and also just how bouncy the classic Chvrches synth pop production is. And reading all the press they've done around this album, Chvrches is, I think, kind of happy to get back to what they used to do before their third album, Love is Dead. Love is Dead was like, they made it with Greg Kurstin. They were trying to get more mainstream attention. And I thought, I think that the album still had some moments, like Never Say Die comes to mind. But I think they were probably, I guess, displeased with like their lyrical accomplishments on that. And they're definitely displeased with their collaboration they did with Marshmello, Here With Me, which is technically their most listened to song, but it felt like a creative sacrifice on their part. And I know like they caught a lot of abuse for criticizing Marshmello for working with Chris Brown right after he worked with them. And that was a whole big thing, unfortunately. But now they're back with this fourth album that they wrote it all by themselves. And then Ian Cook and Martin Doherty, they even did all the mixing themselves. So this is truly just an in-house Chvrches thing, which makes a lot of sense because it sounds like what they actually want to do. So I thought it was operating at a really high level.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the most complete record that they've had. It's kind of to the point that you were talking about. I think having them be the ones that doing it all in house, I think having a concept that they were working around, and I think having this like basically the sound that they were working with, but that they were trying to take in different directions, made this feel a lot fresher. And I think that it really helped to make something feel cohesive. And I gotta say, I don't know if there's like a skip on this, which is pretty cool. I don't know if there's necessarily a track that stands out as like that's by far my favorite. I think there's a couple that stand out as really good tracks, but there's also nothing on here that I'm like, this is a shit song from Chvrches, which is nice because I think the last couple albums listening, it was very up and down. They had the hits, but then they had a lot of tracks that just felt like filler or not really uninspired. So that's pretty cool. What were the moments or the tracks that stood out to you most?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. It's very consistent, both production wise, but I just think the song quality stays at a good level the whole time. I really like Final Girl, right in the middle there. Like a lot of like double meaning with that. Obviously, the final girl trope in horror movies on the surface, but also just Lauren seems to be getting at a lot of like misogyny and culture and like the experience of being public facing woman and stuff on this album. I think it comes to a head nicely in Final Girl. But I like the last songs. I liked Asking for a Friend, I like California, How Not to Drown, which is the one duet here with Robert Smith. That's the one moment of someone else doing any writing. And Lullabies as well. Yeah, I think it's honestly really rewarding. Again, not having any expectations for Chvrches. This is definitely my favorite thing they've done.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the song Violent Delights. Felt like a spacey type sound in the beginning, which really like stood out to me. Asking for a friend, the moment when the drums come in and when you like you still matter, and then like the drums just come in, it's like a really like cool production moment, like a nice choice. Um, and then you mentioned a couple others, but I also wanted to shout out Good Girls. I thought was a pretty solid track. Overall, it just feels uh, it feels to me like maybe they're finding something in terms of how they want to go about making music. Maybe not chasing that high profile producer, but finding like real inspiration and like something fun to like make this like 80s pop sound around. So I think that's pretty neat.
Right.
Any
Yeah,
last thoughts?
totally. Yeah, and I mean, I think they've probably realized that you don't have to cater to everyone. They can just cater
Yeah,
to themselves and then their actual
good point.
fans and be very successful group. And that's certainly what this album seems to be setting out to accomplish. So good for them. It's definitely a I don't want to say like step in the right direction like they were doing some massive wrongs in the past, but just like creatively, just it definitely feels like a nice like they've like really laser focused on what they're good at and what they want to do.